This is the Get Better Everyday podcast with Matt Gouget. Actionable advice from real-life superheroes who, just like you, are in relentless pursuit of the best version of themselves. Join me as I interview the best of the best in business, sports, and life. All right, Get Better Everyday podcast with Matt Gouget. I'm excited to have a great conversation with my buddy Doug Liska. I hope I pronounced that right. Co-founder of Nextdoor Lending. How you doing, Doug?
Fantastic. It's a Monday, so I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, for sure. And this year, I feel like just got started in February. It was slow going from the beginning, but let's chat about 2023, and I'd love to hear your take. In a changing market, and this would apply to anybody, right? It doesn't have to be mortgage specific, even though we're both mortgage guys. In the vein of getting better every day, how do you get better every day when it seems like things change constantly?
I mean, well, change constantly is something that's going to happen whether the market's at the top or the bottom. So at the end of the day, those are all outside circumstances that they're going to happen to every single person, regardless of the industry, regardless of what their focuses are, et cetera. Whether it's good or bad, those things are going to be happening to everybody. So in the vein of getting better every day, like that's one of those things that's internally focused. So it's one of the big things to me that regardless of the outside circumstances, they're going to happen. So getting better every day, to me, the reason for the focus is because whatever it is, I'm going to be better prepared for it. I'm going to be able to handle it better. I'm going to be able to plan better, execute better, et cetera, if I'm looking for the inches that I know I can control, which, at some point, you getting better on a daily basis is within your control. All that other stuff isn't. So it's going to happen regardless of what's going on from the outside sources. So
right. Yeah, I love that too. And that's what some people fail to understand is like, life is hard, business is hard. It's hard for everybody.
Right.
So the only controllable is you. And, Jim Rome's, one of his favorite quotes that I love to go to is like, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Right.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I think we're definitely aligned in that vein. We're like, the best way to improve and do more business is to get better. Serve clients at a higher level, serve loan originators at a higher level, and just do better. That's the best way to grow. So maybe rewind us a little bit, because we started talking about, stuff that me and you are familiar with in the mortgage industry. But where did mortgage start for you? Where did this journey begin?
I've been in the industry since 2005. I started at a local bank when I was just still in college. I actually started as a teller, but got into like the sales part of it. And in 2006, I moved to Quicken Loans, which obviously right now we know it as Rocket, which became the largest lender in the country. I spent 13 years there. I spent about half of it, probably about a third of it, originating loans within a retail model. And then I started moving up into the leadership aspect when it came to leading sales teams, leading sales regions, working on different initiatives from, a lead allocation or finding different opportunities for the banker force inside of a retail lending organization like Quicken Loans. From there, I got to a point where, it actually, prior to me leaving was when I really started focusing on this idea of getting better every day. You get to a point where I think just based on natural ability, et cetera, you kind of plateau if you're not really trying to challenge yourself or trying to do things differently. And so I started to get into focusing on like, hey, what kind of routines, what kind of things can I be doing to challenge myself outside of just what my normal day-to-day is? Because you're going to go through that. It's the things you do additionally that kind of, make you sharper or make you grow or give you the additional tools you need to be successful. And in doing so, I started things like meditation and exercise, but I also started looking at different things in the industry. And, going into 2018, 19, we started to see, which I think probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast know, that started to see a growth in the broker model, right? It wasn't just about retail anymore. And when it came to the technology and different opportunities, I saw different people who I had worked with throughout various points in my career start to be successful on their own. In trying to get better myself, one of the things I wanted to do was leverage time better. And in a retail model like the one that we had at Quicken, there wasn't that much time available for you to be able to decide what you wanted to do with. And I have a family. I have two young girls. Most of my time was dedicated to my role within Quicken. In addition, the flexibility I had to be able to figure out when I wanted to invest time in them wasn't that open. And so in seeing the opportunity and knowing that I feel like I was in a place where I could be successful, also taking into account, I want to be able to invest in my family and have a balance between the two that was a real balance, not just what I said was a balance in my head. That's what made me leave the retail channel and really start to look for opportunities in the independent, trying to build something that was a little bit different while also being able to provide opportunity for loan officers, borrowers, our clients, and giving my life balance at the same time.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's something that, there's not enough talk about, but it's something that's true besides, technology and pricing and all the other things that the broker channel affords us. There's a lot of people out there, myself included, and you, that, we've got families. Family is most important thing in the world. And to be able to go out there and operate in a model, you and I have both been to industry events across the country. And I've met thousands of brokers that are successful in the broker channel 1,000 different ways, right? And so for some, that means, they're all in with their family, and then they've got, blocks dedicated to, here's when I do, operational type stuff. Here's when I do my loan originating. Here's when I connect with realtors and add value to them. Whatever the case may be, like, that's a good point, that it allows some flexibility versus just, I'm punching a clock 8 to 5. I'm going to answer the phones, answer incoming type stuff. Like,
exactly,
you're building your own business, which is super cool. And, that's one thing that get better every day through a lot of the conversations I've had. And sounds like you're the same way. You're doing it in multiple areas all at once, most of the time, right? Like, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better dad. I want to be better at business. I want to do better in all the things, right? I'd love to hear from you, how you think it's possible to kind of balance all of those, when, like, that growth mindset doesn't apply to just business and then you just sit on the couch when you're at home, right? Like, it applies. So how do you do that in multiple areas at the same time?
So still figuring it out, number one. I don't know if there is a solution, but I haven't gotten there yet. Getting better at it, though. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you have to realize that all you have is time, right? Everyone, Gary Vee, when we were down in Naples, he mentioned it, but like, everybody has the exact same amount of time. I know something Matt talks about as well. So it is about trying to leverage that time and be intentional to focus on what you consider your top priorities are. And you got to kind of work backwards, right? Because first you have to know what your top priorities are, and then you have to figure out the time to invest in it. But in the things that like you want to focus on when it comes to getting better, whether it's in business, family, personal, your marriage, etc., I think a lot of the foundational things are the same. It's literally like, there's tools and there's tips and there's different things you can do, but at the end of the day, it's okay, we have this amount of time. How can I make that the best time possible? By being intentional, by being present, by having a plan. And it's weird to do it to begin with, at least it was for me, because I'm not like like, I get up at the same time every day, but it takes a lot to get me out of bed. I have these weird tools. We could go into that a little bit later if you want, but I'm not the guy who just gets up at 4:30 and starts. But to be able to accomplish everything that I needed to, I had to. And then when you start like looking at planning time with your family and everything, between me and my wife, it was kind of weird, because it's like, we don't want to make it just to where it's scheduled, because at some point it seems like that almost takes away from the being in the moment. However, it's the exact opposite once you start doing it, because it's planned, because you have an intentional goal, and because you are going to be there and be present, you actually do get more out of it. So it was almost like a weird dynamic, because I was like, I don't want to schedule it like it's just another to do. But at the end of the day, when you start to look at your time, like, how am I going to get everything out of every minute, every hour, every day? You actually, it's not so much a to-do, it's like your priority. It's what you want to be doing. And then you get to be proactive with it, because I think myself and probably a ton of people almost spend the majority of their time being reactive to things. It's almost like, what's the next thing that pulls you in a different direction, as opposed to, I know where I'm going next and what I want out of it. So I get to like plan for that and figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And what I want people to make sure they heard from what you said, because it's gold, and I found it to be true, going through my own, self-development journey, is that, Jocko Willink talks about discipline equals freedom. And when you say, here's the 2 hours I'm going to spend with my family, here's an hour I got to block out because I got to take, this one to basketball practice. Here's, these 2 hours that I got to work in the home office tonight. Then in those 2 hours, you're extremely present, because that's all your focus is. I knew I was going to spend these 2 hours on this thing. And so it's all in on this thing. And so, you use the word intentional. It's very important for anybody who's out there listening and wants to, set goals, move the needle, change in any way. It's about being clear on your goals and then intentional towards getting towards them. And
I mean, listen, I was going to say at the end of the day, one of the things that I was terrible at before I started to focus on this is I might have more time, but I was distracted, caught up in different things, not paying attention. And at the end of the day, whether it's more or less time, if it's worse time, it doesn't give you the results you're looking for. And it actually probably in some cases is worse, because if you're there, especially with my kids and my wife too, if I'm there with them, but at the whole time I'm there, I'm distracted or paying attention to something else, it's like I might as well not be there. Just go do that. And you fight with that because it's like, oh, more time equals better, but it doesn't always. It's like, get this done. So and then when you get to this, you no longer have to worry about what's happening with that. So
yeah, for sure. And that's something my buddy Scott Groves too, who runs a coaching program. He tells loan originators, and it would apply to anybody, who's got a demanding job where you're serving people at a high level. Be all in on whatever you're going to be all in on. Exactly. If you're going to be all in with family this weekend, be all in with family. If you're going to, spend 8 or 10 hours co-hosting open houses and doing that stuff, like block that out and do that. But you shouldn't be on the phone for 45 minutes of the hour you're spending with your wife.
Yep.
You should. And, I had to get better at that. And like, to your point, like it's a journey, and none of us are perfect, and we're all working towards better. But I realized too, like just being at baseball practice, if I'm sitting there on the phone or texting and kid gets a hit and looks over and I'm not paying attention, I should probably just go do work and not even be there. Right.
Absolutely.
And, then you can get intentional, get all the work done, have the phone off, and actually be out there involved in practice. Right. And then that's an hour of good intentional time. So I love all that stuff, man. You mentioned too, that you started, did you mention a health goal or something you're doing towards?
So yeah, so when I first started doing it, like one of the things that you realize when you talk about getting better, if you're working on your mental, emotional, physical, everything, it all plays into each other, right? Because you can't be amazing at this or really unless you're also good at this, or at least you could be better at this if you also were focusing on this. So when I did it, I started researching routines, different habits of people. And, in most of them, there is some correlation between taking care of yourself mentally, taking care of yourself physically, spiritually, emotionally, etc. That all plays into you performing at your best, right? So I created a morning routine, and I guess this might have been what you were talking about. So getting up early was something that, I've always been, somebody who got out of bed probably earlier than the average. But when it comes to what I was doing with that time and how early that was, it was something that I really focused on. And amazingly enough, after, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years of like getting up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock on a daily basis, I still don't do it naturally. It's not something where on the weekend I'm like, oh, I'm up. Now what's next? I know there's people that are out there that are like that. That's definitely not me. So I had to go to an extreme. And when I did this, I have young kids, I have a wife. And so what I didn't want to do was wake up the whole house, because they have all these weird alarm clocks that scream and break apart, run away, etc. But those are all noise. So I found there's a Pavlok is what it's called. It was on Shark Tank. It's supposed to be like something that deters you from bad habits. It's basically like a taser you wear on your wrist. And if you make a bad choice, you shock yourself. To me, that's kind of weird, because if I'm cognizant and I'm making a conscious decision, I could just not do it as opposed to shocking myself. However, as an alarm clock, it's effective because I'm not choosing for it to go off. It goes off at a certain time. And that was literally one of the first things I bought to try to develop, okay, this is when I need to be out of bed. I've taken a little bit further, and I've got a couple things that don't hurt as much anymore as a taser, but it's still all collar. Yeah. I mean, legitimately, that's basically what it is. But they're tools that allow me to do what I need to do, because again, it's not something that I'm conditioned to do naturally. However, it's important enough to me to do to make sure that I get my day started right and that I have the same routine, because it does allow me to focus not just on getting the things I need to done in the office or with my family, but also for me, because that's the one part I think that probably most people sacrifice the most is literally your time. And it's something that I think is necessary, whether it's time to focus on your thoughts, meditate, figure out the plan, strategy, etc. If you don't have that time for yourself, it's very hard to make that time for every other area of your life. And it's one of the things that people overlook probably far too often.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I like about what you said, and you repeated it a couple times, was like, you're not good at getting up early. You're not a natural early riser, but you took something that you knew was important, and your goals and everything else outweighed like the uncomfortable of getting up early. And so, you forced this habit. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of them can relate to the gym, where like, it's not fun. You don't enjoy it. You got to drag yourself there. But the goal and the feeling you get after you accomplish it and after you do it far outweighs any uncomfort, right? But you just have to get through, for some people, they say like it takes 21 days to create a habit or something like that. You can probably attest to it, and I could attest to it, that some of these things you might have to do it for a year before, your body starts going, all right, well, Doug's going to shock me until I get out of bed. So, I better get up. But, that's the thing is you've got to trade some momentary discomfort for, the good of moving towards the goal. And I've, seen it play out in a number of different things I'm trying to do, that it was a worthwhile venture. And the more worthwhile it was, the harder it probably was to get myself moving in that direction. The more uncomfortable I had to dredge through to get to whatever those goals were. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that it wasn't perfect, because I think a lot of people think that, you see successful people, you're like, the guy gets up early, does great with his family, great business person, runs a well-oiled machine of a business, and it's just all sunshine and rainbows. It's not, right?
No, listen, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? And it's one of those things where,
yeah, and I'd love to pull something out to make it relatable, because I think most people, when they're on this self-development journey, it's going to benefit them to hear it's not easy, it's not perfect. Can you think of a time, in business or in personal, where you've gone through struggle, and what it's taken to say, you know what, like, I gave this a go, I failed, but I'm going to continue to move forward?
Yeah, I got plenty of examples. One of the ones I think, though, especially with how it relates to the things that we go through, because from a priority standpoint, I think, like, if you're watching this, you're probably prioritizing your business and your growth there, but the personal aspect is where it's tough. And, I think one of the ones that I've struggled with the most, and unfortunately, like, I still work on, I don't think there's anything that I'm going to stop working on, though. It's constantly focusing on it to improve it. But my wife and our relationship is probably one of the ones, because at the end of the day, I wake up early, I have that time to myself. I start my day at the office, I get home, and then I prioritize the time with our kids. When my wife, normally at the end of the day, she's last, right? Because it's just from a time standpoint, that's when we get our time. And it's so easy from our standpoint, with all the mental, exhaustion and the stress and everything else, to not prioritize or have a plan for that enough, or even just to get weak to where it's, what you should be doing, but it's easy to say, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll focus on having a better conversation. And when it comes to my relationship with my wife, at the end of the day, she's the one who's there for me constantly, and probably has to deal with the most as a result of the things that we do professionally and personally. And we've constantly had to refocus and think of new ways to be able to make that successful. And it's easy, or I wouldn't say it's easy, but failing and just saying, okay, it'll just work itself out, is something that I think we do too often. And, I wouldn't say that, I'm always, hyper aware of it. There are times where, I've had to have her approach me and say, hey, we need to get better at stuff, but it's worth it. And, we've gone through different things as far as like, making sure that we have time carved out just for us personally, whether it's, date night or a weekend getaway, or even if it comes down to like, as hard as it is, I'm sure all parents out there can relate, like sticking to like a nighttime routine with bedtime for children. It's so important, because it's not just so much that, hey, they get enough sleep. It's also because at that point, that's when we have time to be able to connect and talk about what's going on in our lives. And, running a company and growing a company and having young children, there's so many distractions that you can use as excuses to why this doesn't. But that communication that we get to have and know that why we're doing this together helps reinforce me getting up and doing all the same stuff all over again. Because I think you said, like in the beginning, like family is the most important thing. Well, that is most of the reason that drives me and why I'm doing everything that I'm doing, is because I want to be able to create something, provide, be an example for our children. So without my partner in it, who's John and Nader are fantastic, but my wife's been there a hell of a lot longer. She's the one that I need to constantly refocus and make sure that we're on the same page. And it's not easy, like, especially because it is all the way at the end of the day. It is tougher because we all get tired and there's always excuses as to what, didn't work. So why we could, sacrifice this, but it's not worth it. So,
yeah, I love that. That last bit that you just talked about could have been me talking. It literally could have been me talking, because it's the same stuff. You're running a business, coaching sports. I'm involved with the kiddos. And by the time they're in bed, I'm exhausted. Right. And so I think what sounds like you're trying to do, I'm personally trying to do this too. And this is an area where I feel like I struggle as much as I have successes, is super intentionality around it. Right.
Yeah.
Where we're going to spend these 2 hours. And, I've even made it to where I got some advice from some friends where, Sundays kind of like a reconnect of what went well this week. What can we improve on? How can I support you in the coming week? And just that conversation. I'll tell you something, Doug, that's my wife, I think she got a kick out of it. I think she's enjoying it, but like part of my self-development and trying to live as like a whole life millionaire, right? Like not just wealth, but also health and family and all that. Since I wanted to focus on this, I told my wife, I'm going to get a husband score every Sunday. And I want you to not only score me, but I want some detailed feedback on things that I could have done better, and like we talked about, I'm open about it because I think it's probably gonna be helpful to people. Sometimes I'm present physically, but not present mentally. Right. And so my wife said this week, your score was a little bit lower because your mind was somewhere else. You might've been here, but when I'm trying to chat with you or we're trying to talk about something and, you're wandering and you're not, present emotionally, your score goes down. Right. And so putting more intention around that and just understanding what I think helps remind me to put intentionality around, the relationships, my wife, my kids, and my health, is that when those things are going well, it helps business. Right. And so some people are like, well, I can't take all this time away, then my business is going to suffer. It's the opposite. It's if you're intentional about what, some friends of mine call the lead dominoes, relationships and health, and getting along great with my wife. We're really in the zone and we're, a team with the kids, and we're a team within this family, and I'm getting to the gym 3 days a week and I'm feeling good. When that stuff is going good, that momentum just propels your business more than an extra couple hours in the office, doing tasks would do.
Not only propels it, but it makes it feel better too, because then regardless, you're balancing your whole life. So when this is going well, but there's strain here, it diminishes the success you're seeing here. So when you can do all those, it makes everything better. I love the husband score. If you got like a template of a scorecard, send it over, because I'm sure my wife would love it. And the way you said planning. So actually, it was one of my daughters at her school. They had us read it, and Stephen Covey. I've read different books, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. That's one of them. Like on Sundays, plan. Talk about how you did. What was the execution? The same way we do with a business meeting, we do as a family, and then plan for the upcoming week. And there's definitely times we do it better than others, but just having that time. And one of the easiest things that I'd say for everybody to do, especially if you're a busy person and you schedule your time, share the calendar, because there's times where I forget to talk about stuff, but if my wife can see it in my calendar, she knows it's coming up. So it's not a complete surprise, because I could tell you previously the amount of times that I was like, oh, hey, I have dinner tonight, and then she was already planning on stuff, and it just creates a bad situation. Where as long as there's visibility, it helps. But I love the scorecard, and I'm sure my wife would love the scorecard too as well.
Yeah. I'm coming off a week where I need a little bit of improvement. So this week we'll see what I can do.
Getting better every day, right?
Yeah, I'm getting better every day. Thursday night, art night. We're blocking that out. We're going to the kids' school. There's going to be some amazing art by some 4th graders. I'm sure of it. So that's awesome, man. I think that like this stuff is as valuable as any, lessons in business that we can speak of. So I appreciate the great conversation. Any parting words for the Get Better Everyday community?
I mean, listen, again, it's a journey. It's never like there's a destination where it's like, hey, I'm as good as I can be. I used to have a saying, one of my guys actually got like t-shirts where it was hashtag BBA, because I was just asked like, hey, be better. When do you want to be better? It's always, right? So it's always looking for those little inches. And when it comes to like that whole balance, like a lot of what we talked about here, I think there's a ton of examples of people who have been amazingly successful in specific areas of their life, but not in their life as a whole. And that's one of the things that's important to me, and I hope is important to a lot of the people who watch this is, as good as you can be and as much as you can achieve here, if you didn't do it with all the different areas, to me, it's still lacking. And that's where, having all those things intertwined, kind of like you said, it just feels better if those things are firing better. And it also allows you to accomplish more because you're invested in it more. The more that my family, like my kids are probably, some of the biggest cheerleaders for our brand. My youngest actually last night hit me up and said, I need more t-shirts. I only have 2 left for Next Door Lending. I need more. And I'm like, awesome, fantastic. But the more that they're invested and feel part of it, the easier it is for me to wake up and keep doing everything I'm doing, because I'm that much more dedicated to making sure it works because they're in it too. And, I don't know if it's a secret sauce or something that most people overlook, but it just makes sense to have all those areas of your life intertwined into that, invested into what you're trying to accomplish from an overall standpoint. So
I love it, man. Get better
yeah,
every day.
sure.
Family edition.
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
for joining me,
There you
Doug.
go.
Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it.